RTV6, Indianapolis This Week.
Indianapolis is taking a big step to show it belongs in the top level of sports cities. The city will make a bid to host a second Super Bowl after the success of Super Bowl 46. It's a decision the business community is solidly behind. RTV6's Norman Cox has more on the announcement that has the Circle City buzzing with the idea of becoming the big stage once again.
So I have 4 words for you. Let's do it again. Let's do it again.
The Super Bowl numbers are a big reason Mayor Ballard wants another go at it. 116,000 visitors, $324 million in outside spending, $176 million that directly impacted residents and businesses here, and $40 million in state and local taxes. So Indianapolis will try for Super Bowl 52 in February 2018.
The competition will be fierce. You must understand that. The competition will be fierce for that slot. It always is. But when after 46 years the NFL decides that future host cities should look at your playbook, it shows that really Indianapolis does deliver.
Among the competitors, San Francisco and Minnesota, which will have new stadiums, and the usual Sun Belt cities. But Colts owner Jim Irsay says this city has something special.
We're just not another Midwestern city that's dealing with cold weather issues that had a one-time thing because we had a great public-private partnership, and that ship was called in with the league owners. We're a special community that can pull these things off.
Organizers say enthusiasm in the business community is off the charts for another Super Bowl. And businesses' financial support helped Indianapolis win the last competition.
Indiana made a big statement to the NFL and to the rest of the world in 2008 when we walked into the bid presentation with all of our funding in hand by pledged companies that are headquartered in Indiana.
Joining us now on Indianapolis This Week is Mark Miles, the board chairman of the 2012 Indianapolis Super Bowl Host Committee. And Mark, thank you very much for being here. We appreciate it.
Pleasure.
You put up some good numbers as the mayor was talking about. If we can just take another look at those this time around, 116,000 visitors, $324 million in outside spending, and the list goes on and on. Quite an impact. Are you happy with those numbers?
Yeah. You know, we tried to avoid projecting what it was going to be worth economically because we were pretty sure it'd be a pretty nice return on investment no matter what it actually looked like.
Right.
But this is pretty good news.
You know, can you improve on that if we do this a second time around? I mean, have you already seen areas where maybe you came up short in the last one and, you know, we can maybe do better?
I don't know whether there will be a strategy to make those numbers bigger. One thing that happened that was, I think, an act of God was the weather.
Yeah.
Most of us think that by the weather being so inviting, more people spent more time outside in the Super Bowl village, and that had the effect of sort of condensing or confining the spread of the economic impact. I think if it were a little colder and people were looking for a little more time inside,
right,
it might have gone a little further out away from downtown.
That, I think, has a lot of people shy about maybe going after the second one because it's going to be really hard to beat that week that we had.
Well, you know, we'll see. We didn't, in fact, if we missed anything in the planning, it was we didn't plan for that much nice weather.
Exactly.
And it got close to being too many people downtown during part of that time. We planned for our normal weather and worse weather, and we were convinced we'd have a great Super Bowl even with the sort of Indiana winter. So we dodged a bullet, so to speak, for Super Bowl 46. But if we have normal weather or even kind of ugly weather, we think we can put on a great show.
Now we have Allison Millington heading up. She headed up the 2012 bid process. She's going to do it again for 2018. I guess she's the right person to be there. Are we lucky to have her there?
We are so lucky to have Allison. I've done a lot of sporting events and worked in a professional sport for 15 years. I've never been around a person who has the whole skill set that she does. She's maybe the most organized person I've ever met. Kind of work ethic that's off the chart. And she's a great people person. She cares about this community. She cares about people. And so she's a great leader. And for her to move over to be the president of the Indiana Sports Corporation when she gets back from producing the Olympics coverage of gymnastics and stay in this community is a great thing.
The mayor had mentioned we're going to have competition in 2018, likely from San Francisco, Minneapolis, maybe some others. They're going to have new stadiums. We're likely not. At least I haven't heard that we're going to get a new stadium between now and then. So you know, it would seem that we're already maybe a little bit behind just because of that. Is that something that we're already taking into account?
I don't think of it that way. There's always been very tough competition, and there certainly will be. At least a couple of new stadiums will be built between now and 2018, and even before that. With the league going to New Jersey or New York for the year after next, they've, at least for the moment, said they'll even consider open-air stadiums. Now, whether they'll stay with that approach or not remains to be seen, but if they do, then obviously it opens up the possibilities for a lot more NFL cities. But I like our chances. It's competitive, and a new stadium is an advantage, but we're not going for 16, which has not been awarded, or 17, so there's a couple years to maybe cycle some of the new stadia through, potentially.
Right.
And, you know, we really did well with the NFL. The owners, the league, their stakeholders love the experience here.
Could the 2014 Super Bowl in New York and New Jersey ruin it for us because it's going to be cold out there? Or we thought it would be cold here, but it is an open-air stadium, and it's wintertime out east. I mean, that's not a pretty scenario sometimes.
Well, I hope they do well. I hope it's a great reflection on the National Football League. But if it doesn't go so well, I don't think it bodes so negatively for Indianapolis. It could discourage the league from going back to other open-air stadiums. At least that's my take on it. They were obviously prepared to be in cold air, but they sure liked having that roof and knowing there were no possibility of inclement weather for the game itself.
So if you worked in Vegas, which you don't, but if you did and you were an odds maker, what would you give us as far as odds in getting 2018?
I like our chances. I certainly think they're better than 50-50. There's, you know, no way that I know of to quantify that. I'm not an odds maker, but this community distinguished itself. We really feel like for the league, we created a new model. You know, we created a content and a vibe because of the condensed downtown experience that they haven't had previously, and I'm not sure where else they can have it. Some folks say New Orleans is similar,
right?
But the French Quarter is not Georgia Street. It's
not
a different
family
vibe.
friendly all the time,
not necessarily
right?
so family friendly. And if you go through the other NFL cities, it's not clear to me where they could do what we did. They may be able to create some sense of that, you know, elsewhere in their community, but right downtown in the middle of it all, between the football stadium and our convention center where the NFL experience was, I think we're a tough act to follow.
So what is at the heart of our bid for 2018? Is it, you know, we did such a great job this year, and, you know, we're proven fact now, you know what you're dealing with, so bring it back? Do you add something new? We had hotels are an issue, are they not? Number of rooms?
Well, first let me say I look forward to being the recently retired past chairman, so it won't be myself.
You're wiping your hands from the next one?
I'll be around maybe in some way to help from time to time.
Consulting or something.
New group of folks ought to do this, and it's for them to decide how they want to put it forward. From my perspective, though, a baseline, a starting point is that the NFL had a fabulous experience here in so many ways. We're a convenient city. They like the experience from the airport in to the airport out. We did well in getting the private planes in and out. That's often an issue from an owner's perspective. The NFL experience was off the charts for them. The previous high number of attendance was 200,000. We had 265,000 paid attendance. That's real money for the owners. Getting in and out of the stadium was, I've been to probably the last 5 or 6. It worked so well, they hardly broke stride to get in, and the league takes notice of all that. So I think we scored a lot of points in a lot of different categories.
So in the next 30 seconds we have left, you were talking about the new folks who might take over after you are gone. What is one thing you would tell them, you know, here's what we could improve on for the next go-around? This is where we came in a little bit short this time around.
Yeah, well, the first thing I would tell them wouldn't be that, on that topic. It would be stay with the idea that we do this for us, and we find ways to leverage the value of this for Hoosiers. As to things we could improve, I'd say you better think about a bigger crowd downtown than we imagined, and think about how to make it even more exciting for fans.
All right, Mark Miles, we appreciate you coming in for us today. Thanks very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Well, the next 3 years have already been decided for the Super Bowl, as we've said. Next year's game will be held at the Superdome in New Orleans. The first there since Hurricane Katrina hit. That will be interesting. 2014's will be held in New York City, the first ever held there. And in 2015, it will be in Phoenix. The NFL is expected to vote this fall on the site for the 2016 game. Speculation has focused on Los Angeles. All right, Governor Daniels and the state of Indiana lost a big case this week against IBM and owed the company millions of dollars. Now, Democratic candidate for Governor John Gregg is responding to the court's ruling. RTV6's Norman Cox will have more after the break. The Daniels administration's loss of a big lawsuit against IBM this week has prompted sniping from Indiana Democrats and a promise to revamp the welfare system if they come to power. RTV6 reporter Norman Cox is here with more on what candidate for Governor John Gregg is proposing. Norman.
Well, on Wednesday, a Marion County judge awarded IBM roughly $60 million for equipment it bought for the state and denied the state anything for the cancellation of the $1.4 billion contract to revamp the welfare system. The administration had claimed IBM botched the transition to a more computerized program. Indiana has since switched to what it calls a hybrid program that combines increased use of technology but with more use of human caseworkers. John Gregg ridiculed the whole IBM deal, calling it Indiana's biggest mistake. He says if elected, he will appoint a committee to look at the way FSSA and the Department of Child Services care for clients. He said Daniels had pushed through the original deal without consulting people in the field who really know how things work, hurting clients and wasting millions in the process.
It's cost us $60 million, and we've hurt children and the most vulnerable in our society. It was obviously a mistake, and it sounds like now we're going to start appealing the judgment, so we're going to be throwing more good money away.
Looking to the future, do you think the hybrid system that we have now is working, or do you think
when I read the story today that they said that this was Indiana's attempt to correct what was the state's worst welfare system, you know, that was a great soundbite 8 years ago that the current administration just hammered Joe Kernan with. If they can brag and not think that this still isn't at the bottom of the barrel with the number of children being abused and dying, they ought to be ashamed.
Governor Daniels denies that the state would be wasting money on the appeal since it has the cash in a legal contingency fund. He says the state has saved in just the last year on the hybrid system the amount of money the judge awarded to IBM. And he says current statistics show that this welfare system is far superior to the old one in terms of accuracy and speed in delivering services.
And of course, we will be following that appeal as well. All right, Norman, thank you. Coming up after the break, we'll be back with our political insiders to talk more about the court ruling and other hot topics. All right, joining us now are two of our political insiders. Kip Tu is a Democrat and former chairman of the Indiana Democratic Party, along with being the former state chairman for the Barack Obama campaign in 2008. Also joining us is Abdul Hakim Shabazz, the longtime host of Abdul in the Morning and now the publisher of IndyPolitics.org. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
A judge ruled against the state in a lawsuit with IBM over the canceled contract with the privatization of welfare. Obviously not what the state was looking for, and now they're planning on appealing. John Gregg is saying this is throwing good money after bad.
Well, it's not throwing good money after bad. I mean, in any litigation, you always have a right to appeal if you think you're in the right and if you think you've actually got a decent shot at doing so. I think what's important to remember is a couple of things. Granted, I won't necessarily say the state lost. I mean, they definitely didn't win, but it also wasn't a total loss on the state's part because IBM didn't get anything other than money for equipment that they already had and money they had to pay their subcontractors. But they sued for about $100 or so million, and at the end of the day, only got about $52 million, but most of that was for equipment and for paying subcontractors.
The judge said the biggest losers are the people here,
yes,
the taxpayers.
And they are. I mean, it seems to me that the lost story in this whole thing is the colossal screw-up that this was by Governor Daniels and the fact that it hasn't gotten the publicity that it deserves. Privatization in this instance was a huge mistake, and all it did was cost the people who were trying to get those services.
Yet some say it advanced us past the point we were, and we're actually having...
It moved the state forward, and the privatization may not have worked with that particular company in that particular instance, but the welfare system, even you have to admit, my friend, is in a much better place than it is today than it was 8-10 years ago.
Well, we had welfare reform at the end of the Clinton administration. I think that's why we have welfare in a better place than it was before.
All right, let's move on to House Leader Pat Bauer, House Minority Leader Pat Bauer. Sources tell RTV6 he may soon lose that position and not be leading the Democrats in the House. What are you hearing, Kip?
Well, I worked for Pat Bauer for a while, and so I owe a lot to him, and I will say that it's like many other things, I think, in politics, and that is that he's been there for a long time. He's been a very successful leader for Democrats for many, many years, but as you know, generations come up against that, you have people with ambition, and they feel like it's their turn, and it ought to be their turn as they look at it, and I think that's probably accounts for most of what's going on right now.
But the other thing, too, is I think people underestimate Pat Bauer. I don't necessarily agree with his politics, but the guy is not stupid, and you don't stick around that long unless you got the political savvy to do so. And the fact that, and I think it's rather ironic, when the coup was attempted last week, the Democrats couldn't get a quorum. You know, a majority of people in the room, because Pat Bauer had been working behind the scenes and working that old Pat Bauer magic. You can't underestimate the guy, and you only get one chance to to kill the king, and now now he's on alert.
Oh, you think this may be a lost opportunity then?
You can try again, but it's going to get harder and harder because Pat Bauer is going to be looking for it now.
I've been around State House since 1984. These have been attempted many, many times. They have never succeeded. This would be the first time that they would succeed. I'm not saying that they won't succeed, but you know, some people are talking about what happened in the 2010 elections. Throughout the country, Democrats suffered great defeats. I don't think this sits at the foot of Pat Bauer, our defeats in 2010. So
I think it's more widespread.
Yeah, it was definitely more widespread in 2010. What I think it's more attributable to is just the general sense by some of the younger generation that it's their turn to lead.
Although there's some strong feelings out there. We've been told that he has a non-inclusive, dictatorial style of leadership, and that's not good for a lot of others who are under him if that's the way they feel about it.
One man's dictatorial leadership is another person's dictatorial leadership.
So you like his style, is what you're saying?
Well, kind of, yeah. I mean, like I said, the fact that Pat Bauer has been able to hold on for so long, the time for the Democrats to change leadership, I would argue, was really back in 2010, after they took the loss, took it on the chin, saying, hey, we need to make our change. But the fact that they all voted for him, kept him there, you know what? You kind of dance with the one who brought with you. And already an email has gone out this weekend from a big labor union saying we support Pat Bauer, we support his leadership. So there's already that sense of there's Pat Bauer working behind the scenes, and it mysteriously ended up in all us media people's mailboxes.
He's calling in some favors, it sounds like. Let's move on to Democratic candidate for Governor John Gregg held a press conference, several around the state, announcing his plan for early childhood education, talking about he wants to institute a fully paid pre-K program, something which we don't have now. He wants to continue with the kindergarten program that Governor Daniels set up that's fully funded. Not hearing a lot of people saying we don't like that, but how do you pay for that?
Well, it's an investment in the future. It seems to me that what he said and what I strongly agree with and strongly believe is that we save money in the long run if we invest in early childhood now, because every piece of research that has been done that I've seen says that those early dollar investments make the biggest difference, because when you get to children sooner, then you start to identify problems earlier, you can take care of them earlier, and then they don't blossom into larger expenses. So I think what John Gregg said was we need to make the investment on the upfront so we save money in the long run, and I think that's exactly right, and it's something that Frank O'Bannon was fighting for. It's something that, to his credit, Governor Daniels recognized but never put it in as high a priority as I think he should have.
Well, a couple things. First of all, thanks to Mitch Daniels, John Gregg, actually, the money is actually there to pay for early child education, because we'll actually see surpluses, at least for the next go-rounds with the budget. The problem with the early child education is, do you make it mandatory? Because the kids who go will get a head start on the kids that don't go. And this is part of the reason why most of the gains are lost by 3rd and 4th grade, because the kids who didn't go to early child education, didn't go to full-day kindergarten, the teachers have had to slow down the curriculum so they can catch up with everybody else. So the big question is going to be, are you going to make it mandatory? Are you really going to get the kids to show up? That's the trick in early child education.
Well, I think they're slowing down the education and what goes on in the classroom right now, because you have the No Child Left Behind Act, and that's kind of caused many classrooms to split. I know that's the deal with my children now. The classroom is kind of split between this group and this group, just to try to adjust for everybody. So it's already going on a little bit.
Well, maybe we ought to just rethink the way we form classrooms altogether. And should we really have the really bright, advanced kids with the ones that maybe a little bit extra help? I know education segregation doesn't sound like a nice thing, but I mean, is it really fair to the smarter kids that they're slowed down the progress by the kids who just haven't been able to catch up?
Now, Kim, go ahead.
No, go. What was your question?
What I can't understand how he's going to get away with is, he said, I don't know the cost of this right now. You won't know it until you institute it. I mean, Wouldn't all politicians like to be able to say that about programs they want to put in place?
Well,
Let's put it in
yeah,
place first, and then we'll see how we're going to pay for it.
That's a fair statement, but what I guess I would say is if you say this is going to be one of my top priorities in education reform, then you put it in there, and then you look at it and you look at the other things that you might have to do something different with. But I think the fundamental thing he said, which is absolutely right, is it's going to save money in the long run. And so 3 or 4 years out, when these kids have gone through the system, you're not going to have to spend so much time on remediation. You're not going to have to spend so much time on these other things that we're spending an enormous amount of dollars on. So it's an investment in the future, and it's something that's long overdue. We've gone through an entire generation. We started debating this in Indiana, and we're finally coming to fruition.
15 seconds.
Yeah, one real kind of quick point. Also, I think hitting there is John Gregg's support actually for vouchers, because part of his program is you can send the kids to a public school, a private school, or any sort of type of school. Like, wow, that sounds like a voucher program. So my good friend John Gregg, I'm proud of him. I'm all for it.
Kip was shaking his head.
Let's move on to the next topic.
We got to move on to the next show. I'm afraid. We're out of time, guys.
All right.
Kip, Abdul, thanks, guys, for coming in again. It's always a great time. All right. Stay up to date, of course, on political news and analysis anytime by following our insiders, Laura and Robert, plus Kip too, and Abdul Hakim Shabazz. On our Capitol Watch blog, you can find the link on our webpage, theindychannel.com. Indianapolis This Week continues right after this. Today marks the final day of the Indiana Black Expo, and there are plenty of events taking place at the Indiana Convention Center. Here are just a few of them. The Indiana Historical Society's traveling exhibit will be on display. The exhibit features a history of African Americans in Indiana, including a short film about Madam C.J. Walker, the first African American millionaire. The exhibit is on display from noon to 6 today. The Fashion Here and Now show will take place from 2 to 3. And if you're looking for something for the kids, the Sports Arena Bouncers are hosting the Family Fun Zone. It's open from noon to 6 in the Convention Center. And that's it for this edition of Indianapolis This Week. I'm Todd Connor. Thank you very much for joining us, and have a great day.